the scene is yours.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, when we think about our projects, our products, what we are developing, there is a number of factors that are involved in this. And we can optimize and tweak each and every one of these factors, but very often a tweak in one side will produce a sometimes unexpected or undesired result on another place. So we need to be aware of how these things are connected. Often we focus on the things we know, and that's not good enough. It's not good enough that we look at the measurements and the consequences of things that we change, which we know. We have to think and analyze how other factors are connected to that. Often in development, when we talk to developers, I'm coming from development myself, one thing that we are measuring and that we are following up is cycle time that leads to a deadline at the end, of course. And we do not know why we focus on that, because the ultimate thing with the cycle time, why we focus on it, is that we assume that a delay will lead to a high cost. But who knows what that cost will be? Anyone knows what the delay cost in your projects will be? Very few do. There are some statistical analyses that about 10 to 15% of people involved in projects have an idea. So, the one thing to focus on when you can focus on only one thing to quantify is the cost of delay, because that will help you very much in doing your work. That will help you in prioritizing, that will help you in making good economic decisions and understand better how things are interconnected, because then you can take a decision, okay, if each feature has a cost of delay, you can make informed decisions about what is more important to do than the other. If you focus only on return on investment, that will not be enough, because then maybe you do something that has a very high return on investment, but a very low cost of delay, so it would not matter if that comes out a little bit later, and you have something else which has a lower cost return on investment, a low development time, but a high cost of delay. So, what would you choose? If you start to think about cost of delay, that will change the picture, how you see the world. And that is also what Agile is doing with us. When we work with Agile development, when we say that we work with Agile, we are switching our worldview. In the classical way of working, very often we lived in a fantasy that the set of requirements were fixed, and of course cost and delivery time were also fixed. Of course, no one ever missed the deadline there, didn't we? But we saw the requirements as a fixed set, and we assumed the others, it was okay to tweak on. With Agile, we changed that worldview, and we see that we say, okay, we want to work with fixed intervals, we want to work with fixed delivery time, we want to work with fixed cost, but we accept that there is a variation on what we deliver. And in order to select the things to deliver correctly, we need to work with prioritization, and we need to do this regularly. Now, Don Reinhardsen, who has written quite a lot about this stuff, he introduces the concept with the delay cost, the cost of delay I already mentioned, and that this should be steering your prioritization. If you have a fixed cost of delay and variable duration, it's very easy what is more beneficial to the organization. Of course, with a fixed cost of delay and variable duration, the items that are delivered quicker than others have, of course, a higher return on investment, a lower cost of delay over time, and you should be doing those first. Now, the same applies if you have a fixed duration and a variable cost of delay. It's very easy to calculate as well. But in the domains where we are working, that is usually not the case. We have variable cost of delay and variable duration. So what we should be working there instead is a weighted cost of delay, where we divide the cost of delay over the duration to find out what we should be focusing on and what we should be working with. This, Don Reinhardsen calls the weighted shortest job first. So the quotient of cost of delay and time should steer what we are doing next. Now the interesting thing with this is that we should not see this as a fixed value, because while we are working, we learn new things. We are working with assumptions here all the time. When we start working, we just assume this has this and that customer value, this has this and that cost, but we don't know. So this will change over time, so we should be doing this regularly. In the Scaled Agile framework that takes up this, and they have simplified this a little bit, or given a little bit more information, instead of just looking at the cost of delay, to say it's very hard to quantify in numbers if you just see it as, yeah, cost of delay, what is this? So Scaled Agile framework suggests that you have three aspects that you think about, and that is which user or business value do you generate, which time criticality does a certain feature or thing you work on have, and also what is its risk reduction and opportunity enablement value. So does this work reduce the risks in my projects, or does it enable other opportunities? And then you divide it over time. And also, they have run quite some studies and seen that you don't need to have absolute figures here. You can use relative ranking using the same cards from planning poker for story points. This will give a good estimation as if you compare it to giving it real figures in dollars or numbers. So if you just give a relative figure that gives a good enough approximation, since anyhow every value here is a guessing. None of that you know before you start working on that stuff. So you are guessing anyhow, so you can make your guessing easier. Instead of guessing this is worth 500,000 crowns, you can say, okay, this is worth 20 times as much as another feature. Now, we have done some work there and seen that you can simplify it additionally, and that you can, instead of just doing some kind of planning poker around it, you can use stacked ranking with it. So you don't even have to assign numbers. You just say, for example, that you have a certain order of the features. One feature has a higher user value than the other, and you just order them. The same with risk reduction, opportunity enablement, or any value you want to look at, and duration as an approximation for cost. So if you, during a project, then learn, for example, that a feature is easier to implement than you originally thought, so its duration will go down, this will impact, of course, the complete ranking very easily. Or if you learn that by a customer discussion, it has a higher user value, it will also impact the resulting ranking. So instead of thinking about absolute values, you can just think about a stacked ranking, building a stack of your features or whatever you want to prioritize with it, according to some parameters that are relevant and important for your company, like risk reduction, opportunity enablement, user value, or whatever is important. And that way you can start to get an approximation, easy to use approximation that helps you to get better priorities than you have today when you just do one guessing in the beginning and then you leave it be and never look at it again. So, if you only want to quantify one thing, quantify the cost of delay. If you can quantify more things, quantify more. But if you just do one thing, do the cost of delay. Do the prioritization, except that prioritization is always based on guesses and estimations. There is no fixed truth when it comes to prioritization. You assume what the world will be. Except that prioritization is not a one-shot activity at the beginning of a project. You should be revisiting it because you are learning lots and lots of stuff during your development, during your project. You are learning that cost is higher or lower. Something is more complicated than you expected, or it's lower. Something may be making something else easier to implement. Something may have a higher user value, or you learn that, oh, now a competitor has already released that feature, so actually it's not so important anymore. So all these things change during your development. So do this prioritization as a part of your backlog grooming sessions and work with it regularly. And you can simplify it by doing relative stacked ranking instead of having to guess absolute figures. So, that's all from me. Thank you.